All right, well, I'm here with James Bays, our diplomatic editor. And James, we have now, I understand, had confirmation from both Qatar and Hamas that there has indeed been an extension for 2 days in the ceasefire. Of course, all of this was hypothetical. Now there seems to be the nearest confirmation that we've had so far that this will indeed happen.
Well, this is important news, and as we were hearing earlier on, it's come at the same time as I think they've nailed down the exact numbers and names of those that are going to be exchanged in the coming hours. That was taking some time, but it seems that both of these things have been done at the same time. The Israeli Prime Minister's office informing the Israeli families some 13 captives to be released in the coming hours. We think 33 Palestinians. So that's the completion of the 4-day agreement. And now we have 2 more days. So we potentially, I think, we don't know the numbers, but we potentially have about 10 captives, Israeli captives, each day released, and probably potentially about 30 Palestinians on either side. So an important development, and this of course means that the bombardment in Gaza does not start again, because if we hadn't had this deal at 7 a.m. Gaza time, just a few hours from now, then the bombardment would have started. So it is respite, further respite for those on the ground in Gaza. It also means that more aid can come in, and although the aid, the UN and the Red Crescent and others say is not enough, every day means they can start to replenish the stocks in Gaza, particularly the fuel, to try and get desalination plants going, to try and get hospitals going, to try and get some of the most basic facilities that are needed to keep Palestinians alive, not just with hospitals, but with the real threat of disease, the real threat of starvation that has been warned by aid agencies and the UN. So this is good news for everyone, it seems, at this stage.
OK, James Bays, our diplomatic editor there, thank you very much for that. Well, let's go to Tarek Abu Aom, who's in Khan Yunis. And Tarek, we have had now confirmation just a few moments ago that there will indeed be an extension of 2 days. This will have come, of course, as huge relief for the people in Gaza.
Absolutely, that's true. As those 2 days came after 4 days of a truce that had been agreed between Hamas and Israel under Qatari and even regional supervision and mediation. Now, Palestinians are really now happy they start now again to move, because they were asking about the possibility of the extension for further days of ceasefire on the ground in order to also come back again to the normal lives. What is also important for Palestinians is that there's going to be a much more guarantee of flow of humanitarian aid due to the fact that this 2 days of ceasefire, additional ceasefire, had been clearly under the same terms, under the same conditions related to the release of hostages between both sides, and also to guarantee the flow of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. Now, what had been entered to the Gaza Strip during the last couple of days in terms of the humanitarian aid is considered to be limited with the needs of the territory. But what is also important to mention is that there is no any drop of fuel that had been delivered to the north of the Gaza Strip. This is according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health in the territory. But generally, a sense of relief, comfort had been now spread among Palestinians, as they now have been confirmed by the Qatari Foreign Ministry that they had agreed and even reached a kind of extension for the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel on the ground, which means that there's going to be additional 2 days clear of relentless Israeli attacks without any destruction or even injuries reported in Gaza Strip.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So aid is going through for now, of course, Tarek. Given that we have this now 2-day extension, the hope is that a continued aid will go to those that need it most, particularly potentially in the north of the Gaza Strip too.
Generally, the north of the Gaza Strip, this area had been completely deprived from the humanitarian aid just before the time of the ceasefire that had been held earlier between Hamas and Israel. Meanwhile, they were running low completely on fuel, water, and even they cannot have any kind of delivery of fuel to this area due to the Israeli prevention of the entry of the fuel and gas into the territory. Now, maybe it could be allowed to the reach of the fuel to the north of the territory. But till this very moment, there is no any confirmation from local authorities inside the Gaza Strip that there is going to be much more aid in terms of fuel that will be delivered to the north of Gaza Strip. But generally, these kinds of humanitarian aid considered to be important, as the north of the Gaza Strip was experiencing very dangerous humanitarian circumstances due to the ongoing blackout of electricity, the absence of humanitarian aid. And now those people who are still inside the north of the Gaza Strip, they are in very desperate need for this humanitarian aid, which will relatively help to mitigate the aggravating humanitarian crisis, in particular in this small isolated area in the north of the territory.
All right, Tarek, many thanks for that. Tarek Abu Aom in Khan Yunis there. Well, back with James Bays, our diplomatic editor here in the studio. And we were saying a short while ago, this breaking news that we have indeed confirmation from Qatar, key mediator in all of this, that Hamas has agreed to a truce to be extended by 2 days. This is a vitally important step, as we've heard from Tarek Abu Aom. It means a lot in terms of aid, but it also means a lot in terms of captives too.
It means a lot to the people of Gaza, and it means a lot to families on both sides who are watching every single development here. This will be more women. I think most of the children have been released, but there may well be many more children on the Palestinian side. But in terms of the Israeli captives, we're not sure how many children there are left. We think that in the coming hours, maybe even now, behind the scenes, the latest transfer will be about to take place, and we know how that works now. It's a transfer after Qatar, with the help of Egypt, has done the mediation. It's a transfer that takes place with the International Committee of the Red Cross in Gaza. They will take the people out, probably to Rafah, not necessarily to Rafah, and it's 11 that we're talking about tonight. But then the extension is 2 more days, and we assume that the 2 more days will fit the pattern that we've seen up until now. So it'll be about, or at least 10 released in terms of Israeli captives held in Gaza each day, and then 3 times that in terms of Palestinians. So about 30 at least Palestinian prisoners will be released. So that then takes us to a total now period of truce, of temporary ceasefire of 6 days. So that means that now the people of Gaza, unless there's any violation by any side, have a breathing space until 7 a.m. on Thursday morning Gaza time. As Tarek just said, it means more aid trucks can come in. The UN, I think, really feels it's not got enough aid in yet to sustain the people of Gaza, given how no fuel was allowed in for such a very, very long period, until literally just hours before the pause in the bombardment. They're hoping they can make a dent in a really desperate humanitarian situation in this time.
I think it's important to also add that this latest information is also being confirmed from the Israeli side, on Israeli media, from the Israeli leadership as well, an indication of the kind of tireless mediation that's gone on behind the scenes while this 4-day process was in action.
Yeah, you saw in Hashem's report that command centre, that operations centre here in Doha. Qatar, in many ways, the linchpin of this, but that doesn't mean there are not other players who've been very, very important to what's been going on. Notable, as I say, is the International Committee of the Red Cross, because they do the facilitation on the ground. They don't actually want to be involved in the negotiations. They want to keep themselves completely neutral so that on the ground they can operate and be trusted by all sides, and that's what they've been doing, getting the captives out of Gaza. Egypt has a key role because Egypt controls the only gate to Gaza that is not controlled by the Israelis. So Egypt has an important role there, and Egypt, of course, has the longest standing peace deal with Israel. So it's the Arab nation that probably has the best ways to deal with the Israeli side. And of course, you've got lots of other foreign governments, but notable among them, putting pressure, I think, on Israel sometimes, and some restraint on Israel, is the United States, which has been very closely involved as well. And Qatar has a very good relations with the United States as well.
All right, James, many thanks for that. James Bays, our diplomatic editor there.